Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. With me this week are Ben Munson and Anna Wells. We each have more than 15 years of experience covering the manufacturing and design engineering industries. Every week, we take the 5 most popular stories on our websites and discuss the implications they have on the industry moving forward. Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Ben, David, or Anna at IEN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also email Jeff at IEN.com with "Where'd you go, Jeff?" in the subject line. We're also live every Thursday at around 2 p.m., so you can subscribe on YouTube at IEN Magazine and get a notification every time we go live. Ben, thanks for coming back, man. It's good to see you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Is it an honor?
It's an honor to be here, yes.
It's good that we are starting off on a good foot here. Anna, how are you doing this week?
It is also an honor for me to be here.
A true honor. I had no idea that we were going to bring such prestige to this episode, but I'm really looking forward to it. All right. Well, before we jump into our first story this week, we have another word. No, we have a new word from a new sponsor, OEO.
At OEO Energy Solutions, we light your facility. OEO provides commercial and industrial LED lighting solutions and is a specialty supplier of both LED lamps and luminaires. As a leader in plug-and-play technology, OEO has developed the Easy LED lamp, which makes the conversion to LED fast and simple. OEO's direct replacement Easy LED lamps are designed to replace metal halide and high-pressure sodium bulbs. These lamps function with your existing ballasts, so that costly fixture replacement is not required, making your LED upgrade as simple as changing a light bulb. As an added benefit, the Easy LED hybrid technology also works on direct line voltage, providing you ultimate flexibility. OEO's other specialty products include LED fixtures designed for the harshest conditions, including high-temperature manufacturing applications. Whether you're looking for LED lamps, high bay fixtures, office lighting, or outdoor area lighting, OEO has you covered. Contact OEO today for expert guidance on your next lighting project. OEO's knowledgeable team will make sure you have the right light for the right application. For all your lighting needs, visit OEO.com or call 1-800-553-2112. OEO Energy Solutions. Energy savings simplified.
And we're back. Just a reminder that OEO's direct replacement Easy LED lamps are designed to replace metal halide and high-pressure sodium bulbs. These lamps function with your existing ballasts, so that costly fixture replacement is not required, making your LED upgrade as simple as, anyone?
Changing a light bulb.
Yeah, yes. She got it!
Yeah.
She got it! Whether you're looking for LED lamps, high bay fixtures, office lighting, or outdoor area lighting, OEO has you covered. OEO Energy Solutions. Energy savings simplified. All right, our first story this week. Latest Formula E race car goes from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 1.82 seconds. The Gen 3 Evo unveiled at HSH Prince Albert II's private car collection will debut its Season 11 of the ABB FIA Formula E World Championship. There's a lot going on in there.
What did you just say?
Everyone knows what's happening already. Developed by specialists from Formula E and the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile, the Gen 3 Evo makes a significant leap in electric racing technology. The Gen 3 Evo has an acceleration that is 30% faster than current F1 cars and 36% faster than the Gen 3 car. That's the Evo's predecessor. The Gen 3 Evo can go 0 to 60 miles per hour in 1.82 seconds with a top speed of 200 miles per hour. It is the fastest Formula E car. Anna, is there a breaking point for automotive capabilities. Like, I get it. It goes 0 to 60 in 1.82, but at like some point, it's just not going to be able to go like 0 to 60 in 0 seconds. Or can it?
Yeah, I don't know. You're just going to like teleport
Yes.
to 60.
Racing will just be like, who can successfully teleport?
I mean, this thing is just like stupid fast. I think Formula E is so fun to observe because it adds so much excitement, in my opinion, to the EV transition. Just like providing a stage for people to see some of the, like what all that torque can do.
Yeah.
Because like, you know, I think we started with like the Prius, which is a sort of like clunky little bubble car. And, but you know, full power EVs, like they put out a lot of power and you can really go fast. You can really go fast quickly. So I think that's exciting for racing fans. Yet we have these other efficiency features that are inherent in these designs that really change how the sport impacts the climate. You know, it talked in the article about regenerative braking capacity that generates nearly 50% of the energy needed for a race during the race itself, which is like, whoa, you know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Incredible.
Well, yeah, incredible.
Especially in terms of like when we're talking about range anxiety and potentially these features trickling down to commercial automobiles.
Yes, exactly. And, you know, not to mention, who would have guessed, I would say a decade or two back, that auto racing would be the world's first net zero carbon sport. Like, I mean, that... I don't know. I just
didn't see that coming.
No. And, you know, I'm always skeptical of the term net zero. There's a lot of tricky math that goes into that equation, we know, like to get there. But the fact that it's even in the ballpark, you know, that this like high speed auto competition is in the ballpark of being like that clean and decarbonizing to that extent is amazing to me. And I think to give it some context, look, if you look at F1, that emits approximately 256,000 tons of carbon dioxide each season. To put that into perspective, the EPA says F1 cars emit roughly the same as the annual emissions of 55,000 normal cars.
Cool.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
So Formula One to Formula E is a huge swing.
Yeah.
And then to also see how impressive and powerful these vehicles are, you know, I just hope that it generates more interest in this sport and perhaps maybe at some point a transition away from the more carbon-intensive version of this, the first version, because people are excited about the technology, you know?
Well, and when Formula E first came out, it definitely, you know, came in more of a lamb. Like a lot of people were intrigued by it. You know, this is just the beginning of evolution in EV racing, but it was not an incredibly exciting product to many people. It wasn't very popular. But Ben, you recently, last year, you had the opportunity to actually see one of these races, and it's come a long way just in terms of like sheer entertainment value.
Yeah, I mean, it's insanely fast and it's very competitive racing. But it doesn't sound like anything in like traditional motorsports. The vehicles give off this sort of like high-pitched howl when they pass by. Yeah, like a banshee. It's kind of it's haunting in a way, but super impressive. Yeah, it was very fun to see that. I think these like the top speed and acceleration increases here are significant, and you know that's a lot faster than what they're currently doing, like a full second to 60 faster than what these cars are doing right now. But I think that the real standout in the announcement is that like still in development quick charging technology that they mentioned at the very bottom. Because when we were at the race, it felt like it was, you know, fairly short. Like I could be wrong, but I think it was about 45 minutes.
Okay.
And I think, you know, a Formula One race can maybe go as long as like 90 minutes, depending on the circuit, I suppose. But, and the reason it's so short is due to the battery. Like when they started, Formula E was using 2 cars. They'd swap out halfway through. And now they use the same car that starts and finishes the race. And I think the addition of quick charging would be a logical next step. And it would kind of help extend the race, and then it would give drivers more options without needing to be as worried about reserving charge. I think it would just be a big plus.
Well, and when you bring quick charging into the equation, like what I love about racing is that it is essentially like an engineer's extreme, almost nearly unlimited resources, nearly unlimited R&D, and putting that kind of brain power and resources into charging really could, push that technology forward.
Was it the Super Nintendo game F-Zero where you like pull into the side lane and you're like wirelessly charging your car? And they already have that. They put wireless charging in a road.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm like, we're not far off.
Just put that right in the track.
Yeah, make it, the future is here.
Well, and some of the other things that they mentioned in the article, just what I'm constantly impressed with the ongoing improvement with these vehicles. There's a new body kit designed to be stronger and more aerodynamic. This is the first Formula E car that's actually going to have all-wheel drive. It's going to be available during qualifying duels, race starts, and attack mode. I mean, what's attack mode exactly? Did you pick that up?
No, it sounds cool. I would imagine maybe if you're trying to pass somebody or trying to ram them off the... I don't think they actively try to ram each other.
It's like the parts in every Fast and Furious 99 movie where they hit the red button. That's essentially attack mode.
Yeah.
Like lighten the nitrous. They also have tires that are they have 5 to 10% more grip. And what was impressive, they're made from 35% recycled and sustainable materials. Now, I understand that at some point, Anna, these cars can't go any faster, right? The performance just can't be improved, I think at some point. But there are still going to be things like tires that, until they're fully recyclable, made of fully recycled materials, there's still a lot of room for improvement there.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, and there's a ton of R&D happening in tires right now, just to make them more durable and better grip and all of that. So we'll see. And EVs already are hard on tires because they're heavier. Yeah. So they're going to need to address that. Obviously, these vehicles are going so super fast, super heavy body. So I'm sure that this is a good area for that development to be taking place.
Yeah, my car has all-wheel drive, and it already kind of chews through tires. So I could only imagine if it weighed 8,000 pounds and I was going 200 miles per hour, it'd be just blasting through my tires.
Just every other day changing.
Yeah.
You talk about it howling like a banshee around the track. A lot of these new additions are specifically designed to make racing faster and closer proximity between drivers. When you saw them on the track, do they kind of keep their distance, or are they still pretty close to each other?
Yeah, they were very close. To the race we were at, there was a lot of caution, and so we got to, of course they were bunched together then, but we were set up at one of the more kind of tricky turns, and they were kind of lumped together.
Yeah.
And then there was a straightaway, and they would take off, and they would just be
whoa,
making that kind of scary noise. I was like, this is
so it's
cool.
like a scream?
Yeah.
Like a panicked cry for help. Very good. All right. Well, I mean, are you going to go to that again this year?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. Right on. Well, it'd be interesting to see just the difference between 1 year, what 1 year makes.
Yeah, and I definitely want to go next year if we have the chance
to
see these insane new cars that they're going to roll out.
Oh, man. All right. Well, our next most popular story, Chinese nationals accused of trying to illegally export U.S. semiconductor tech. The Department of Justice last week unsealed an indictment implicating 2 Chinese nationals in a plot to export U.S. technology to restricted end users in China. 44-year-old Han Li and 64-year-old Lin Chen tried to export semiconductor manufacturing technology. Specifically, Li and Chen tried to buy a DTX 150 automatic diamond scriber breaker from California-based Dynatex International. The machine cuts thin semiconductors. The defendants conspired to send this technology to a Chinese firm that has been on the Department of Commerce's restricted entity list since 2014. Chen was arrested in Chicago. Li is believed to be somewhere in China. Both are charged with conspiracy to violate the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, false electronic export information activities, and smuggling. Anna each face 55 years in prison, $2.5 million in fines. Maybe one of them will see a penalty, and maybe one of them we might never see again.
Yeah, so I thought this was interesting. This is like the third story in, 6 weeks maybe, where we've covered people exporting illegally to other countries. We had 2 that were about Russia. And of course, it's pretty obvious why you object to that, right? The technology in question was being used to help augment weapon systems. It was all being used to give Russia an assist in this conflict that the U.S. does not support. So that makes sense. This export scheme, impacting a completely different end country, is also very significant, I think, because it involves semiconductors. Not only is the U.S. spending billions of dollars to take chip market share back from China for many reasons that include access, pricing, even national security.
Yeah.
But China is playing hardball in this sector as well. They imposed some restrictions last year on some metals that are key in producing semiconductors, making it much more difficult for global producers to gain access to those that in Europe here. So, this stuff that's taking place, I mean, this is like a kind of a hot category, right? And this is not incidental, like this is strategic. And that's why you'll see the U.S., I think, continue to press down hard on violations that have to do with chips specifically, and other electronic components, where we're really trying to aggressively decouple some of these critical industries from China's supply. And they should be doing that. You can't keep the back door open on that, if that makes sense. Like we're putting all this money and time and effort into it. You got to make sure that whatever sanctions that you have in place and whatever regulations you have in place, that you can maintain those and keep those intact, because there's a lot riding on this semiconductor industry for the U.S. specifically.
Do you foresee more stories like this? And maybe they won't always make the top 5, but just based on, in today's news, they handed down another series of like very strict sanctions on Russia. Are we going to continue to see more stories like this kind of in the indefinite future as things sort of get more tense between Russia, China, and the U.S.?
I certainly don't know, but I know that like every time one of these stories gets a press release from the Department of Justice and gets a bunch of news coverage, I think it's a deterrent.
Right.
I think it shows that you can't just act with impunity and do this stuff behind the scenes and no one's going to ever know. I think that's strategic by the federal government, is just making sure that these stay in the public eye. And every time you hear about it, you hear about somebody getting busted.
Ben, I understand, that if you're not cheating, you're not trying, right? But these companies are under a microscope right now. Is that going to be enough to stop these bad actors, or is it they're just playing a numbers game? Like we have so many sort of Confederates out there actively working against U.S. interests, and as a result, it's going to continue.
Yeah, I feel like I'm not exactly sure how they got caught in this instance or any of the other ones I found that were fairly similar, but it does seem like they're going after really sensitive stuff. What stood out to me in the DOJ's press release was that they were protecting this technology that could be used in military applications. So I looked into it a little bit further, and this same company, Chengdu Gaston, they were at the heart of another scheme that the DOJ busted in 2018. And again, it was 2 suspects looking to illegally export technology for military applications. And Chengdu, they manufacture monolithic microwave integrated circuits.
Okay. Which
I found out are used. They're basically essential components for electronic countermeasure systems, which includes like jamming and intercepting enemy signals and
high-end military applications.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so that sounds serious.
Yes.
Yeah. Like if that's what you're into and you're stealing, stuff from other companies, it seems like you're going to get caught.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that stood out to me was this is no simple scheme, right? According to the indictment, this allegedly happened from at least May 2015 to August 2018 for a single machine. Mm-hmm. That just shows how incredibly important that single machine is, and how much time they're willing to invest to try and steal that technology. So, sometimes you think that it's like a simple bait and switch, or like a simpler case of fraud or trying to lie to the government, but I just couldn't believe how long this was taking place. All right. Our next most popular story this week. Disneyland's gas-powered Autopia cars are going electric. Earlier this month, the amusement park told the Los Angeles Times that the gas-powered vehicles in the Autopia ride within the Tomorrowland attraction will be swapped out for electric vehicles. Fully electric engines will be up and running on the Autopia track within the next 2 to 3 years. It's a major change for the ride, which has been in operation since 1955. Autopia designer Bob Gurr says those, quote, god-awful gasoline fumes need to go, and Tomorrowland needs to focus on more sustainable technologies. I suppose it's time for Tomorrowland to not just get with the technology of tomorrow, but, Anna, kind of get with the technology of today.
I think they can, yeah. The article referred to it as a microcosm of the current state of an automotive industry in the middle of a historic transformation. And while that may be true, I don't know. To me, I looked at it in a different way, I guess, because there are certain applications where I think it makes a ton of sense to use the technology that emits the least amount of noxious gases, and that is a child's ride at Disney World.
Yeah.
So to me, what was interesting about this was to look at it outside of the lens of the EV transition is proliferating every aspect of our lives thing, and more like this is the most modern technology that makes the most sense in this application because it's the safest,
Correct.
As he said, kids don't need to be breathing in these ICE vehicle fumes when they're on these rides. We've all been on these rides, I'm sure. And they're loud and stinky. And to me, it's less about the EV transition and climate change and sustainability, but more about using the best technology that's available for an application that, you want to be mindful of the young bodies and the young lungs that are using it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I was trying not to overthink it as a sea change, even Disney's doing it. It just, to me, it's hey, what is available to us and what makes the most sense here?
Yeah. Does anyone notice that the children are covered in soot
right
after the ride? No, Anna, the exposure to fumes has been particularly top of mind to me lately, just because what happens with the seasonal shift, right? Mm-hmm. The windows go down, get that arm out the window as you're driving and just enjoy the 6 weeks of decent weather in Wisconsin. But with small children in the car, you hear all those reports about how it's actually healthier for everyone inside to just, turn on the AC and keep the windows up, especially when you're on the interstate or in kind of congested traffic. And so to me, thinking okay, we're already trying to figure this out on major roadways, I was really surprised to see that Autopia in Tomorrowland was still chugging out oil fumes on the babies.
Yeah.
So I've never had a chance to be on this ride. And before we go down a deep rabbit hole as to what is a suitable vacation on a poverty childhood. Ben, I understand that you've been on this before. What is this ride like?
Yeah, I rode it when I was little. It's essentially kind of a go-kart track. It's a glorified go-kart track, and those are fairly easy to find outside of Disneyland. So, but I remember riding this ride when I was a kid, and that was the late 80s. So
yeah,
and back then it was pretty loud and bumpy. So I would imagine it got worse up until maybe I think it was 2016 when Honda took over sponsorship. Mm-hmm. The ride had previously been sponsored by a couple of different fossil fuel companies. But when Honda took over, they replaced the engines in the cars with their 8.5 horsepower engines, which Motor Trend said were quieter and more efficient. And now it's only 10 years later. Well, it'll be 10 years later when they introduce the new all-electric. They're not going to be hybrid or anything like that. They're just going to be fully electric. And I think I understand what you're saying, Anna. Don't read too much into it. Mm-hmm. It's just a smart change to make at a park, But I also do think it's I don't know, the LA Times journalist, Sammy Roth, who broke the story, he described it as, making the cars electric could kind of go a long way toward normalizing EVs for younger generations. And I think there's maybe a little something to that. I don't know how much how much weight Autopia has with younger generations.
Impressionable
I'm
youth.
sure,
Yeah.
I'm sure it was huge in 1955, but like nowadays, it's like we rode in a car here. Like I don't really see the need to get into another one.
It's a good memory though, right? I mean, anything that happens at Disney World is usually a good memory.
Yeah, and it's a hugely influential company. So if they're embracing something like this, I don't know.
But when you talk about it being essentially a glorified go-kart track, so I've been on go-kart tracks as well when I was younger, and there was something about getting behind the wheel of a go-kart when it was gas-powered and not, feeling like you had, more power in your hands, right? Like, no, there was seriously something about that like made it seem like you were in more of a realistic car or cart because it was gas powered, because essentially you were strapped to a juiced up lawnmower engine, right?
Yeah.
But I think you're right. Like if there is this transition where kids see like a higher powered electric vehicle as like a step closer towards, them being an adult, I don't know. I can see that. Yeah.
No, I get that. My point really was like, instead of like, we all have to do this. Like this
agreed.
is like, you know what I mean? I think it's like, actually this works the best for what we, if we're looking at everything on an even playing field and there's no requirements and there's no sustainability goals and there's no climate goals, this actually works the best.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I completely agree with your point where it just makes sense.
I'm kind of wondering like what this change will mean in terms of infrastructure at the park as well too, because that kind of reflects the current EV auto industry in the U.S. Whereas we could maybe have a lot more adoption, but there's not necessarily all the infrastructure in place, like in terms of charging networks and recycling.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering how this is going to change for the people that work on the ride, for the park itself. I mean, they're going to have to put in chargers. The people who perform maintenance are going to have to learn some, kind of radically different stuff.
It'll actually be really interesting from that standpoint, just because, pretty much all amusement parks use electricity and a lot of electricity. These are very power hungry attractions. And Disney World actually has its own power plant, right? To power all of these, all of the park's functions. And if adding an entire fleet of, mini EVs puts any pressure on that grid, what changes they have to make and whether or not that could be anything that we could actually scale up in terms of grid infrastructure. It was kind of interesting looking into Reedy Creek Energy Services, or RCES. That's the wholly owned subsidiary of the Walt Disney Company that provides electric power to the Reedy Creek Improvement District, which specifically covers Walt Disney World. And it's, you're right. I mean, maybe it won't be that much in terms of every other attraction that they're powering there. I mean, they got a lot going on, but it'll certainly possibly cause some change. You also talk about sponsorship opportunities. It's cool. Like, do you know if those are Honda engines that are going into the car?
Yeah, they swapped them out when Honda took over sponsorship in 2018.
So is Honda doing the electric switch then too?
Oh, I don't know. The only details that Disney has shared so far is that they will be fully electric. That's really and that the timeline is pretty much 2026.
Well, because when you talk about actually getting kids more exposed to the technology, like when it could be like Tesla's Tomorrowland and all these kids are in futuristic Teslas or Hondas, then you could really do something also in terms of like getting a little bit of, brand equity with the 6-year-old, but still like exposing them to kind of cool futuristic electric cars. And if you can tie your brand to it, I think that's a pretty good opportunity.
Sure.
All right. Well, our next most popular story. Heineken uproots huge apple orchard as cider sales slip. Heineken owns Penrose Orchard, a 300-acre site in Wales. The orchard was planted in 1997, but cider sales are down, and Heineken has been left holding the bag of apples. The, quote, surplus of apples is a bummer because the apples grown in Penrose are bittersweet, so they're pretty much useless unless you're making cider. The company wants out and has been trying to sell the land since at least last year, but it hasn't been able to find a buyer looking to buy an orchard. So Heineken uprooted the entire orchard and shredded all the wood for biomass. Now, while many residents decried the orchard abuse, it kind of comes down to simple economics for Heineken. The company says the amount of cider consumed in the UK has fallen by a third over the past 10 years. So, Anna, as Ben asked in this story, how do you like them apples?
This is a tough one. Of course, people hate to see those trees get cut down unnecessarily, is what it feels like. But it does, to me, reading it, it did feel a little bit unfair when you consider that, there are similar large projects taking place on a daily basis where business decisions like result in the loss of trees or ecosystems. People are, and you don't see this kind of backlash when a company says, hey, we're expanding our factory. And that's in the hundreds of acres sometimes.
It's different when it's a cornfield or we can't all be replacing blighted old infrastructure.
Right. And so it got a lot more attention than I think some of those other projects that is not very visible what's happening there to that local ecosystem, but it's, most certainly impacted. In this case, the land is in a very rural valley. So it seems very unlikely to me that these trees are going to be replaced by a warehouse or a parking lot or something, right?
Yeah.
More than likely, I think this is probably going to be sold for agricultural purposes. I honestly think that maybe that's better than the brewer leaving it to rot because it's probably very costly to maintain. And at this time, if there's no revenue for Heineken in the cider segment, then it becomes a cost center for the business. And what are they supposed to do there? If the business holds it, do we expect them to dump a bunch of money into painstakingly maintaining it? Mm-hmm. That seems pretty unlikely to me. In this case, I think better to repurpose it for what you would hope would be maybe a similar purpose, growing trees or crops or something that befits the land. Of course, we want businesses to be good stewards of the environment. I think everyone agrees on that.
Yeah.
But they do often enter these markets in good faith and then become, I don't want to use the word victim, but I will in this case, victims of consumer sentiment around a specific market category, especially in the food industry, right? Mm-hmm. Cider 10 years ago was huge. There was a million varieties. It was selling like crazy. And then it just kind of fell out of fashion with consumers. These things happen in food and bev. I don't think we can expect companies to just hang on to assets that aren't serving them when those markets change based on consumer preferences. It wasn't really their fault. So I don't want to come across as being pro trees getting cut down.
Yeah.
However,
they're not being cut down. They're being repurposed as biomass.
Yeah,
Apple orchard hater.
Yeah. You hope that the land is good, but as you said in the story, Ben, the apples are very specific types of apples that are useful only for cider. They're not eating apples. Mm-hmm. Eaters, I think they call those. Yeah. In the orchard industry.
In Big Apple.
In Big Apple.
Yeah.
So there was a limited, amount of things that could be done with those specific types of trees. I know it felt unfortunate. It's kind of, gruesome to think about the birds and all that stuff. But at the same time, it's difficult to also see Heineken's position. What could they do there?
I think that if people can get over it when a new skyscraper goes up and thousands of birds and entire bird populations are perish as a result of them flying into the building, a flock having to move because of the orchard, is a little bit easier to stomach.
Right. No one says anything about that. There's just hundreds and hundreds of projects that get initiated every day.
Yeah.
That people are just whatever.
Yeah.
And
wind turbines are just kind of butchering plenty of them too.
Yeah. Skyscrapers where birds are just flying into the glass every day. And it just, a lot of the stuff is, you're allowed to be outraged by any of it. Yeah. Right. I'm not, but at the same time, it's it's another thing,
Yeah. Did seltzer kill the cider market?
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, seltzer wasn't hard seltzer wasn't a thing 5-6 years ago, right? So
you would think if you were going to make a jump from cider it would be to seltzer instead of something else. I don't,
No, just because to me, like cider was the only beer alternative out there for people that weren't into, higher end beers or craft beers. But now that there's seltzer everything and even canned cocktails, like I can understand I can understand how they have to make the shift. Like I'm sure Heineken didn't want to do it this way, Ben, but what else are they going to do? Like sell the Orchard to other brewers that are dealing with the same market realities?
Oh yeah, and I wrote this, so I want to be clear. I'm not like blaming Heineken necessarily. They were well within their rights to tear up the Orchard, and it sounds like they did so in accordance with local regulations. But again, that just doesn't mean that people have to like it.
Yeah.
And this is just an example of that. I would imagine if they were allowed to go ahead with tearing up all these trees, that maybe there was at least some sort of environmental impact study performed ahead of time, and they decided that this would not have a material impact on the local wildlife. But in the story, they're speaking to local wildlife experts, saying there's species of birds that were using this orchard for foraging and for shelter, and they're not going to be able to do that anymore. And there was comment from local people saying like, this is evil, this is disgusting behavior.
Yeah.
And maybe some of those are overreactions, but the fact of the matter is, it's just another market reality. It's like nobody's saying you have to keep your apple orchard, especially if nobody wants your apples. By the sounds of it, they were disgusting apples, like only good for cider. Can't eat them. Even the horses probably won't eat them, right?
Right. We can't even get the pigs to eat these apples. What are we going to do?
But it's just an example of there's going to be blowback, especially when you tear up an apple orchard, which I don't know. It just seems like, what did it do to you? Why did you have to do this to the apple orchard?
Well, it's, to me, that's the same thing. At the end of the day, this is their land. They can do what they want with it. I mean, it's in the same way that they bought the land and they planted the orchard, right? But I mean, I think that they actually did more of the responsible thing in terms of like, and I get it, they have to do it to make it more marketable so they can sell it. But they also could have just, like you said, Anna, left those trees to rot or like didn't take care of them anymore. Which, I mean, I don't know that they wouldn't necessarily be able to like live on their own, but like an orchard takes a fair amount of tending to.
I would think. You would think.
Well, and the UK is the world's biggest market for cider. Like, if it's not working there, like, I don't know. I understand that this was just as markets shift, operations need to change.
Yeah, I would imagine shock would kind of wear off over time. If I lived near this orchard and suddenly saw that all the trees had been ripped out of the ground, I think I would be a little, shocked at first, but it's if they're going to reuse this land for other agricultural purposes, then I guess that's what it is.
I don't know. Maybe it's because growing up in an agricultural neighborhood, you just get so used to that.
Yeah.
We're like in the spring and summer, everything grows, and then come fall, it's gone.
Did you ever rip an apple tree out of the ground? Is it hard to do?
It is not easy. Yeah. Like I've not ripped an apple tree out of the ground, but I've tried to rip other trees out of the ground, and I'd say they all kind of hang on pretty good.
Yeah, I mean they're in there.
Yeah, no, it's when you have the tractor tied to the tree and you're trying to tear it up by the roots, you're just like, I don't think she's gonna go. You're like, or you have it just tied to the, you have it tied to your hitch, and you're just throwing everything that truck's got at it, and then the truck blasts up from the back end, and you're like, ooh, I think we might have ripped the bottom of Dad's truck out, and then you realize it's still there, and you're like, okay, we'll just do it one more time, and we'll see if she holds together. So I bet it took a fair amount of doing.
Yeah,
but it might have been fun for somebody. All right. Our next most popular story. Boeing and Lockheed passed up for Air Force drone program. The U.S. Air Force recently picked two companies that it will continue to fund as part of its Collaborative Combat Aircraft, or CCA, program. Surprisingly, they are not Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, or Boeing. Instead, Anduril and General Atomics will continue with the program, supplying detailed designs, manufacturing, and testing production test aircraft. Boeing said it was, quote, disappointed in the decision. But while they are upset, they're merely out of this phase. The CCA program is focusing on pairing unmanned autonomous drones with later generation fighter jets flown by human pilots. The drones will work in tandem with the manned aircraft, and they'll be able to carry customizable configurations of weapons, sensors, and other features to best assist on any given mission. The Air Force will likely order 1,000 to 2,000 CCAs in the next 10 years, and they cost about $30 million each. So, Anna, while they might be down but not out, this is an incredibly lucrative opportunity for whichever mix of aerospace manufacturers winds up landing this.
Yeah. And, I think there's a lot of really interesting things about this story. And I think Ben is going to talk a little bit more about some of the companies that were selected for this phase. I was going to talk about who was not asked to the dance, and that is Boeing.
Okay.
Because I think it's interesting, you look at Boeing's market position right now and some of the challenges that they've been facing. I'm going to say that in like a very diplomatic way.
Yeah, they've got to be feeling like, come on.
Please, you cannot be serious right now.
Can we have anything good?
Nothing
Fresh
good.
off of Boeing's $355 million loss.
Everything I touch turns to dust. Why?
Why?
We've been hearing so much about their challenges in the commercial flight industry, but what's interesting about Boeing is their defense business isn't exactly carrying the water right now. So their defense sector in recent years has struggled with a lot of cost overruns. They've had some quality issues, delays on key programs that led to some steep losses for the company. Overall, their defense business lost $1.8 billion in 2023, and in 2022 they lost $3.5 billion. So they're making up some ground, but when we're in the billions, that's still a lot of money
But the less billions.
to lose. Yeah.
They lost less billions.
I just think there's a lot riding on this defense unit to get Boeing out of the red. And the unit was profitable in Q1 of this year, but they need to continue to net these big profitable contracts, right? And they need to get a handle on their quality issues that extend to defense as well, because in Defense News recently pointed out issues with Boeing's T-7 program, which was a big drag on their earnings because slow output due to poor quality of some jet parts from multiple suppliers. They had to be sent back to be fixed. So looking at this, lost contracts are not just like a drop in the bucket. That's sometimes, I think, how we view these big aerospace suppliers. Like, oh, you'll get the next one. Maybe it doesn't matter in the moment because it all comes out in the wash. But they have a lot of ground to make up. And then, that said, I also think personally that like anything high profile might give the DoD pause, considering how notable the quality issues have been on the commercial side and how they've played out in the public eye. Because, I just think they would be challenged maybe with this narrative built around like Boeing's commercial planes are sometimes getting grounded and they've been put on notice by the FDA and get your act together or we're going to take over and that kind of thing. Like, to meanwhile then award them these contracts that are in the millions of dollars, that might not play well right now. And maybe that's being taken into consideration. I know that they would never say that because they probably have a very meticulous process. And but quality concerns, in this case could be there. And I think market perception concerns.
No, you're absolutely right. While it might be 10 years before we see the fruition of this program, if hopefully nothing, but if something were to go awry and Boeing was sort of the contractor, people are just going to turn around and be like, well, what'd you expect?
Yeah, like why do you keep giving them money when we're seeing this on the other side of it?
Yeah. So Ben, we focus a lot on the companies that didn't land the contract, right? Because it seems like sometimes when we see these contracts come out, it just seems like like a slam dunk as to who's going to get them. You can almost guess every time you see the press release, right?
Yeah.
So it was kind of interesting to see Anduril and General Atomics land the contract, especially with some of the traditional heavy hitters.
Yeah, it was really clear-cut mix of companies, right? I would like to point out too that the only reason, or the first I heard of this news was because Boeing put out a statement saying we're disappointed we didn't get the contract, and I think that's just a reflection of where Boeing's at right now, that they actually have to say we're going to keep on plugging away at it though, even though we missed up on this multi-billion-dollar opportunity. But it when they did make the announcement, it was Anduril's CEO who said that this was kind of a real milestone in terms of getting non-traditional defense companies into the conversation for these huge defense contracts. And I think Anduril is definitely a non-traditional defense company, at least compared to Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and Northrop Grumman. It's only been around since 2017, and it was founded by Palmer Luckey, who's the guy who invented the Oculus VR headset. He founded Oculus VR. He invented the Oculus Rift headset, I believe.
Okay.
And he also likes to wear Hawaiian shirts.
He's all about the Hawaiian shirts. I just found that out too. I'm like, I can respect that.
Yeah, if you Google image search, if you just want to see a variety of Hawaiian shirts, you could skip that and just type in his name, because you'll see him.
Did you hear the story behind that though?
No.
So he says right now, if you go and look in his wardrobe, there's at least 70 different Hawaiian shirts. But the story was he was kind of mature for his age. And so given his upbringing, and they didn't have a lot of money, his dad was a car salesman. And so he would just inherit his dad's old Hawaiian shirts. And then he realized that as he grew this company, that it had become like his brand. And so now he's just like tied into the Hawaiian shirt guy.
He has to now.
Yeah, he's like, it's my thing.
Yeah, it's it's an interesting company. It's considered a defense unicorn like SpaceX, in that it's a startup that's valued at more than $1 billion. And I think now we're seeing this company and others kind of directly benefiting from other companies like I think it's Palantir.
Oh yeah, Palantir.
And SpaceX, who previously sued the armed forces for the right to equally compete for these contracts with these other major defense companies. So it's an interesting turn of events, and it's interesting technology too. Basically, a little buddy when you're up there flying around. Is that essentially what I mean? To really boil it down.
To simplify it as much as possible.
Yes.
No, so I was fascinated by this company as well. Like Anduril is trying to be, and he says, they're trying to become the next major defense contractor. Their primary product is actually something called Lattice AI, which is really good at processing data from multiple endpoints. And I thought that was particularly interesting, especially as we're talking about tying disparate technology together in the air, operating together in real time. You can see how that's important. So Lattice serves as an AI-enabled software integration and network layer across a variety of legacy systems currently in use. And this is according to Anduril's website. So, for example, U.S. Customs and Border Patrol, they use Lattice to autonomously identify, track, and detect people crossing the border, people, goods, and other things. The National Offshore Wind Research and Development Consortium plans to use Lattice to inspect undersea power infrastructure with an autonomous underwater vehicle.
Nice.
So they're in some really unique applications. And what they did was kind of build this AI layer that really helps process and really helps everything talk to each other efficiently and quickly. So I'm kind of excited to see what happens with this company, and if they can also kind of back up some of their claims, just or some of the things they're working on, just because it seems like they've been kind of knocking it out of the park when it comes to the other contracts that they've won. And I didn't realize how like kind of controversial that was at first, just because like anything related to border just seems kind of hot button. But it was just like, hey, at the end of the day, people want to know what's coming across and what's going the other way, and that's all we're doing. That's what we're tracking. The other thing is that it's an open software platform that can also be used for anything in public safety, security, and defense. Like we talk a lot about the military applications here, but really the sky's the limit just in terms of what Lattice could be used for. So it'll just be interesting to kind of track it. I mean, I know that we're focused on Anduril and not General Atomics. So on the next episode.
They're good too.
Yeah, they're also great.
Yeah.
No hate from us, General Atomics.
All right. Well, before we move into In Case You Missed It, first a reminder that if you're interested in joining our roster of sponsors, please contact Industrial Media President Tom Lynch at tom@ien.com with sponsor the podcast in the subject line. We'd love to have you on board. And now we have another word from our new sponsor, OEO.
At OEO Energy Solutions, we light your facility. OEO provides commercial and industrial LED lighting solutions and is a specialty supplier of both LED lamps and luminaires. As a leader in plug-and-play technology, OEO has developed the Easy LED lamp, which makes the conversion to LED fast and simple. OEO's direct replacement Easy LED lamps are designed to replace metal halide and high-pressure sodium bulbs. These lamps function with your existing ballasts, so that costly fixture replacement is not required, making your LED upgrade as simple as changing a light bulb. As an added benefit, the Easy LED hybrid technology also works on direct line voltage, providing you ultimate flexibility. OEO's other specialty products include LED fixtures designed for the harshest conditions, including high-temperature manufacturing applications. Whether you're looking for LED lamps, high bay fixtures, office lighting, or outdoor area lighting, OEO has you covered. Contact OEO today for expert guidance on your next lighting project. OEO's knowledgeable team will make sure you have the right light for the right application. For all your lighting needs, visit OEO.com or call 1-800-553-2112. OEO Energy Solutions. Energy savings simplified.
OEO's direct replacement Easy LED lamps, and you might have just heard this, but hey, it's always good to hear it again. These lamps are designed to replace metal halide and high-pressure sodium bulbs. These lamps function with your existing ballasts, so costly fixture replacement is not required, making your LED upgrade as simple as, Ben?
Changing a light bulb.
Thank you, Anna. Whether you're looking for LED lamps, high bay fixtures, office lighting, or outdoor area lighting, OEO has you covered. OEO Energy Solutions. Energy savings. Ben?
Simplified.
There it is. We got it.
Thank you.
He's with us.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Just really put you on the spot there. I apologize.
No, I'm definitely paying attention. So it's fine.
Well, let's jump into In Case You Missed It. The stories that maybe not as popular on the website, but stand to make a big impact on the industry going forward. Anna, what is your In Case You Missed It this week?
How many of these do you think Ben missed?
All of them.
We'll just switch it to In Case Ben Missed It. No.
Ben probably missed it. I chose a story about SpaceX. This is not a funny story, so let's all stop laughing.
Oh, right.
It was about SpaceX and their injury rate. So Reuters just concluded an exclusive investigation where they looked into SpaceX's 2023 OSHA records, and they indicated an injury rate at SpaceX of 5.9 incidents per 100 workers, which is massively in excess to the industry average for aerospace, which is 0.8 injuries per 100 workers, 0.8 of an injury.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And they're almost at 6?
And they're at 5.9. Last year, they're at 4.8. So not like a flash in the pan.
Yeah.
Like last year, bad already. This year, worse.
Yeah, it's hard with the move fast and break stuff mentality when it's people that are breaking.
Right, exactly. So SpaceX opened a new rocket recovery facility on the West Coast recently. That's been responsible for 7.6 injuries per 100 workers in 2023, which is 9 times the industry average. So while SpaceX is not commenting on this, safety experts are. And Reuters quotes David Michaels, a former OSHA administrator, who says that high-profile clients like NASA should be taking note. Not only are safety incidents a problem for worker health, but high injury rates, he says, can indicate poor production quality. And he adds that NASA should be concerned. So, interesting story. Should NASA be concerned? Perhaps.
Yeah.
we've talked about this in the past, and there seems to be a fair bit of collateral damage in this space race. And I think we can blame this lofty objective, but I don't think we should. To me, like at the bare bones, we should blame the culture of an organization because this is day-to-day stuff. And I'm so tired of hearing you have to crack a few eggs nonsense as a defense for why factory employees are being maimed and disfigured or even killed, as Reuters reported.
Yeah.
To me, the end game is irrelevant. This is about daily best practices. It's about laziness and circumventing, doing things the right way. And that's, to me, a culture and management problem, pure and simple. Whether you're going to Mars or whether you're making a plastic bottle cap should not matter. That's inexcusable either way. So sorry to see this report about SpaceX. I mean, I know they're doing a lot of really great things, but they need to slow down. I know that there's some big objectives in play here with like the Artemis missions and their participation in that, and some of those deadlines, they have recently been pushed back a little bit. I hope they continue to push them back if that is what is necessary.
Well, and what's wild is that, so SpaceX is such a destination for engineering talent, right? But I mean, I don't know, I guess maybe they're not having any trouble finding people now, but if this trend continues, it's going to be hard for people to go to work when they know that they're 9 times or whatever you said more at risk of being injured on the job site, or at least that's what I would think. Maybe not. Maybe just the allure of working for SpaceX is enough to keep people coming. Whereas, when we talk about the opposite in food manufacturing, food processing, that's keeping people turned away from the industry indefinitely.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to see if that SpaceX shine will ever wear off, Ben, I'm not sure if you had a chance to check out this report. What were your thoughts on the injury rates at SpaceX and some of the things that Reuters found?
Yeah, I mean, the industry, this is considerably higher than the industry average. And is this suggesting that aerospace manufacturing is maybe slightly more dangerous? Does that account for any of it? Or is this just kind of a matter of pressing too hard, cutting corners, that sort of thing, ignoring safety regulations? Or is there something I'm not seeing here about, actual aerospace manufacturing that's more dangerous than anything else? I mean, there's accidents all the time in manufacturing. I'm just wondering if there's something here that makes it more dangerous than and pushes it above the industry average.
So the average that they were comparing SpaceX to was the aerospace manufacturing average.
Oh, okay.
So that's the baseline, right? And not manufacturing in general. So aerospace manufacturing injury rate of 0.8 per 100 workers, and SpaceX's was 5.9.
Okay. So they're multiples of the aerospace.
Of aerospace, yeah.
Okay. I mean,
and this is just more stuff that poorly reflects on Elon Musk. He's a guy who's, I think, spread way too thin at the moment, putting a lot of his effort in at X, while things are getting a little rocky at Tesla, maybe a lot rocky, and now this report about SpaceX too. It seems like he's trying to do too much.
Yeah.
And not really succeeding at a lot of it.
Well, a lot of times when we talk about culture issues, management problems at companies, we're kind of taking an educated guess based on historical data, right? But we know from the top down how he manages companies. So we know how he pushes. We've seen the emails and the memos that say, like, go faster. We've seen that with Neuralink, So it's not, in my opinion, it's not a reach to say that this is a cultural issue and really a top-down problem.
Yeah.
And honestly, for as lucrative as SpaceX is, this is something that needs to be cleaned up now, needs to be cleaned up fast, just because before people start to scatter. I get it. Commercial aerospace is printing money right now, but that could go away.
Yeah.
All right. For in case you missed it this week, I did a story about Boeing taking over a GKN plant that's going to help support the FA-18 and the F-15 programs. So in 2001, GKN Aerospace bought a plant in St. Louis, Missouri from Boeing. In recent months, this plant had been exclusively making aerostructures for Boeing. This led to acquisition talks actually last year over a potential deal that would see Boeing buy the site back. But then GKN had announced plans to close this factory and lay off about 700 people. GKN and its British parent Melrose said the site was simply unsustainable. Boeing sued, saying GKN was the only supplier capable of making, quote, superplastics and flight-controlled surfaces that are vital to the FA-18 and the F-15 fighter jet production programs. Boeing claimed that the plant's closure would breach GKN's contract to supply critical parts to these fighter jets. Well, on Friday, Boeing finalized a deal to buy GKN Aerospace's manufacturing operations in St. Louis. So the site is coming home. One thing I was encouraged by is that a large portion of the staff, about 550 people at least, have been hired on by Boeing, which makes sense. You got to keep it up and operational. It was kind of a high stakes deal for Boeing, especially because the Biden administration hopes to land an $18 billion contract with Israel for about 50 F-15 jets. I picked this story because, like Steve Parker, Senior VP and CEO of Boeing Defense, Space and Security, said, this is a win-win-win for employees, Boeing, and the broader St. Louis community. I thought it was a good story that looked dicey at first in terms of it being an unsustainable location that was going to shut down and then kind of caught up in a lot of legal trouble. And in my opinion, this is a relatively good conclusion to the story, or next chapter of the story, compared to some other things that we see take place in the industry. Ben, I don't know if you had a chance to check this out, but what'd you think about Boeing buying GKN's site?
It seemed like a no-brainer for Boeing. Like, with all of the bad press they've had lately, this is an act of, not entirely goodwill, but you're saving this plant, you're saving a lot of jobs, you're saving the surrounding area from any economic impact, and
saving themselves a little bit too.
Exactly. I was going to say that it sounds like it's a vital production facility, and so to go without it, especially when there are so many important contracts coming up on the line, would be kind of like Boeing shooting themselves in the foot. And
right.
That would be a kind of a stupid thing for them to do right now, because they are hurting in so many ways. So this seems like a very smart play by them.
And I'm curious to see if we're going to continue to see more of this, where things that Boeing has either paired off or spun off coming on, because, we're still talking about the Spirit Aerosystems deal.
Yeah.
Is this them trying to kind of get better control on their supply chain as they, sort of grapple with quality control issues? Is this outside of that? Or is it all part of the greater equation?
Well, I think it has to be considered part of the greater equation, whether they wanted it to be at this time or not. But it is confusing if you consider that these are two companies that they have divested and now are so critical to their operations that they're basically screwed if these companies close down.
Yeah.
I find that to be a bit strange, that you would sell off that piece and then years later say, sue that company for trying to close.
Yeah.
Like, how can you even do that? I don't even know. So I don't know if that was some rattling there that tried to get them to sell to Boeing at whatever Boeing's price was going to be there.
Yeah.
But I think, I don't know, if that's just a hard lesson for Boeing, to not do that anymore. I mean, if these are so critical to their business, because you're right. I mean, they're in essentially a mirroring situation with Spirit Aerosystems, and people have talked for many years about how Boeing is going to survive without that company. If that company goes under, they're almost compelled to buy them back, whether they want to or not, because they don't really have another out. So I don't know, I'm sure that maybe in the early 2000s, there was a strategic piece of this that's not there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But you do kind of wonder, like, why, if they were so critical to the business, they were let go in the first place.
Well, and this is a part of the sort of ebb and flow of manufacturing that we see all the time. And actually, before I get into the next point, I want to call out Nolan Beilstein for turning me on to the primary part of this story, which was that, like, hey, things were not cool with GKN and Boeing for a while. This is just the conclusion, because it all kind of started with just a couple of small, simple releases that said, like, hey, Boeing has this plant now. And then you go to GKN and it says, yes, we can confirm they have the plant now. So kind of really helped look into the bigger picture here.
Yeah.
So according to the spokesman review from Spokane, Washington.
It's not Spokane.
I did this just for you.
You did? Okay.
Mm-hmm. In 2000, this was 3 years after Boeing acquired McDonnell Douglas. They said that they were going to spin off this local fabrication business, which at the time had 1,500 jobs, to what became GKN. At the time, this decision was cheered just because they were outsourcing the work, which would free up Boeing to focus on its, quote, core competencies. But it looks like maybe that's not what they did.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was just a little bit more cost cutting. So it's interesting to me to, like, look at these in the rearview mirror and see, like, oh yeah, everyone thought that was a great idea and just really didn't pan out.
There
really
was a lot
really
of
bad idea.
Yeah, there was a lot of outsourcing at that time.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you remember that like period of time. There was a lot of, like, hey, let's get a third party to do it. It's cheaper. We don't have to pay health insurance, whatever people were doing at the time to, like, pare down.
It was like the birth of the gig economy.
Kind of, yeah. And then not every transaction there, though, was a good idea.
No. And, it's just how trends come and go in the manufacturing industry. All right, Ben, what is your In Case You Missed It this week?
My In Case You Missed It is blood draw device acts like a leech. And this one jumps out at you right away because it sounds kind of scary and gross.
Yeah.
But it's not supposed to be.
Cool if you've ever had a leech on you.
Yeah.
It's
yeah. Mm-mm. But it's intended to do the opposite. Researchers at ETH Zurich designed this device to help patients who are afraid of needles by providing a less invasive option. Basically what happens is a suction cup measuring about 2.5 centimeters is attached to the patient's upper arm or back. Within the cup are dozen microneedles that puncture the skin when pressed against it. Within a few minutes, the negative pressure inside the suction cup has ensured that sufficient blood has been collected to be used for diagnostic tests.
Oh, cool.
So when I read all that, I guess it does sound a little scary, but it's supposed to simplify. They mentioned that you don't necessarily need medical training to operate this device.
Okay.
It's interesting it comes up because this week, too, another med tech company called Valestro said they raised another $22 million to help fund the expansion of its robotic blood draw device. Mm-hmm. So it does definitely seem like automating and simplifying blood draws is a point of interest in the medical community in terms of, just making things easier, streamlining, and making it safer and more, making it overall cleaner.
Yeah, less invasive.
Right.
Yeah.
So I want to know from you guys, which one would you choose? Would you choose the robot or the leech?
I mean, I'm fine with either because, like, even though as the closer we get to the medical industry, sometimes I realize that maybe I shouldn't have such blind faith when it comes to trusting whatever they want to do. But I don't have an issue with needles either. One thing that's crazy to me is just how many people, like, do have issues with needles, and we haven't really figured out a suitable replacement. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's something that's wild to me. Like, ever since the birth of the needle, like, half of the people hate it, and the half of those people faint when they see one. And yet we haven't really, like, designed a better mousetrap for that. Yeah. And so when something like this comes up, it's like, oh wow, not only is this an incredible new concept, but the potential for it is equally incredible. Just because I think that there are a large number of people out there that it's like, you want the needle or you want the little leech, and everyone's going to be like, give me the little leech. Anna, what did you think about this little suction cup?
Yeah, I mean, after having multiple kids, like you just get poked with needles endlessly during that whole process. So that got me over my needle thing. But
did you previously have a needle fear?
I mean, I didn't love needles. Who does?
Well, I mean, okay, yes. I mean, yeah, no one likes, well, I'm sure that some people like it. But I mean, like, most people are just like, well, this is uncomfortable, but
yeah, I didn't like hide under the table or anything. But I just I got where I just whatever it is,
yeah,
doesn't bother. Take it, put as many in as you want. But no, with this, the thing that I thought at first is with kids, because for kids, I don't think it's so much about does it hurt or not. They just are afraid of the needle form factor. They just don't it's scary looking. It looks like it's sharp and hurts.
Yeah.
So a lot of that is a psychological barrier. And for this, if you're hey, we're going to put the little octopus on or something, I feel for kids that would be a lot easier for them.
Way less menacing. Way less.
It really does look at, and so if that helps, because, I don't know, kids when they have to have tests at the doctor's office, anything that can improve the blood draw or the throat swab or the, any of that stuff that's just really uncomfortable.
The vaccinations.
The vaccinations, I'm on board with that. I think that's great.
Yeah, I got a blood draw not too long ago. I had to go down to the lab, and the technology there was basically they put this kind of protective bar in front of you. So if in case you do pass out, then you won't fall down and hit your head. So it's kind of like a ride in that sense, the thing comes down and here we go.
Well, and they actually said part of the problem, we ran the story in Medical Design and Development a couple of months ago. BD had a study in partnership with Harris where they said, patients on average receive too many needle sticks, which is only exacerbating the problem and misconceptions about needles. And so, I think this goes a long way in terms of serving multiple masters, and also just in a general, we could really tamp down on that. The world doesn't need more useless needle sticks.
It's just practice at this point.
Yeah. And why is it what are they, phlebotomists? Why is it everyone doing a blood draw, it's their first day? Do they have incredible turnover there? But I feel every time I go to donate blood, they're just well, I'm new here, so let's give it a shot. I'm just
maybe it's a tough gig. I mean, it sounds not great.
Oh yeah, no, it has to be incredible turnover. It's so rare to go and have the same person in 8 weeks time where you can donate again. It's just hey, whatever happened to Steve? No? Okay.
No, he's not come back. Okay.
There's got to be the people at the top of that field. They could have a competitive blood draws. This person will faint unless you do it perfect.
I would watch that. I don't know where it would stream, but I would be okay, competitive phlebotomy.
Competitive anything is always great. I've seen the German competitive show where they try to cut things exactly in half. Have you ever seen that?
That is not a show. What?
Is it?
It's fantastic. What? It's so great. The clip that everybody always shows this guy just cutting a pretzel in half, and then they put it on the scale, and the announcers are like, "That's perfect." Oh.
This is an entire show?
Yeah, it's so good.
Where they just try to accurately cut things in half.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I mean, all right. Send me a link. Immediately following this. Well, let's move into our final thoughts before we get out of here this week. Anna, what's your final thought this week?
So this weekend, we're going to pop open our pop-up camper, which has been in storage since October. And I want to know what you guys think we're going to find in there, because I'm so nervous about what happens over the winter.
It's been in storage, right?
Outside.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's it's got a tarp and it's wrapped up in clothes. You clean it really well so the mice don't, you put all these packets in there that smell like cloves and things, and then that's supposed to keep the mice out, but I don't know if it does.
Maybe dead bees?
Do you think dead bees?
Dead bees, yeah. Definitely traces of mice, if not mice. Like there will be, I mean, there's just no matter what you do, you will find traces of mice and maybe a small family, whether or not they're still living or not. It's, you know, it's just, it's like anything when after the season changes and you start pulling the spring stuff out of the rafters in the garage and you're just like, you go to shake out the tarp and you're like, here we go. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a screened-in gazebo in our backyard, and it's got these like tarps that cover like when you're not using it. And I usually just roll them up all summer, and then when you take them down in the fall, it's just filled with like 100 sleeping bees that I just woke up. Like no.
Well, I didn't even think about the bees, but that's probably I should probably keep the kids in the car.
Yeah, be aware of that one. The other, so for me, we just put the pier in up at the cottage, and mice used my Can Jam set. If you're familiar with Can Jam, they ate the jammer. They ate the entire disc. Used that shreds to build the nest inside the cans for jamming, and I was just beside myself. It was such a structure that clearly supported a large number of mice over the winter months, and I am in the market for some new Can Jam. So, and they will get it. They'll just get it. This thing was like surrounded by traps, and you're just like,
yeah, they're just relentless, man. So, I expect to find some.
You'll be all right.
They were just jamming.
Yeah.
We took all of the like cushions and everything out of there.
That's
so
good.
There's only the canvas to ruin, but I still don't. I'll let you know.
No, it's good because you don't, then they're into the stuffing.
I know.
That's
I was
everywhere.
like,
That's a good call. My final thought this week was I recently needed some help up at the cottage, actually, and some of the really nice people at France Machine Products in New Berlin, Wisconsin, came out and helped us, and it was incredible. So I just wanted to give them a special shout out and a thank you. They're a machine shop in New Berlin, Wisconsin. Like I said, France does CNC turning, milling, boring, drilling, tapping, threading, broaching. I really didn't think about reading all these aloud when I was listing them. But they also do, heat treating, plating, grinding, electropolishing. They do assembly and design work. And since they helped me out like tremendously over the course of 3 to 4 days, I just wanted to repay the favor and say thank you to them. And, if you get a chance, check them out. I really do highly recommend them. Ben, what's your final thought this week?
Root canals.
Root canals.
Root canals.
Is it like thumbs up, thumbs down, like pro, con?
Pro root
There's like
canals?
thumb in the middle. Yeah, I mean, I don't. I don't.
It's okay to be down.
Yeah, I guess maybe thumbs down. But what I wanted to say was like, I needed a root canal. I'd been putting it off for a long time, and I finally went and did it last week. I didn't want to do it because it's like the quintessential scary dental procedure.
Yeah.
But it wasn't that bad, and it actually helped. So I'm here. I'm here to say, like, if you need a root canal and you're nervous about it, like, you can do this.
Yeah.
Like you're gonna be fine.
Yeah, and for me, it's never been like the fear of dentistry. It's just been like, when it comes to dental work, pretty much anything with your body, like the more you wait, just the harder it gets to treat.
Never good to just put that off. Yeah.
Yeah. I've only seen one person just flat out ignore a need for dental work, and it just magically went away somehow. Well, maybe we'll see if it comes back.
What?
Yeah. No, he's in the room. But he's just like, you know what? I'm pretty sure it'll just go away. And then one day he's like, it went away. And I'm just like, that's not how dentistry works.
No.
Yeah. He's got his bag full of wishes. And I don't know.
Okay.
All right. Well, before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Ben, David, or Anna at IN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also reach out to Jeff at jeff@in.com with, Jeff, where were you at? In the subject line. All right. Oh, you can also subscribe to our daily and weekly newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first, and subscribe to us on YouTube at IN Magazine so you can join us when we go live every Thursday. For Ben Munson and Anna Wells, I'm David Manti. This is the Today in Manufacturing podcast, and we will see you next week.